Okay.
So the purpose of the meeting is just so that you can have a more close-up view for people who are far away. And I'm also recording, so I will download it and then upload it to YouTube and give you the link.
Okay. So I want to go to Visual Studio Code. We will write a simple program like what we were doing yesterday. Okay, have I worked at this machine? No, I don't have, I have 0.
I have 0 extensions installed.
So I always like for sure the live server. It's overkill for now, but it's what I like, so I'm going to do it. And you guys have already probably done this yesterday in the lab. Okay, and then
that's all you guys, if you were following my instructions for the lab, that's all I had to install. If you followed the instructions on the first YouTube video I linked to, I had you do a second extension, and that was an extension that is understands a little bit more about JavaScript. It already without it, it understands a fair amount of JavaScript and will give you some color coding and such. But if I do the second extension, it will know some more JavaScript. Now, I had people yesterday who didn't like it sort of filling things in for you. Some people like that, some people don't like that. So you have to play with the extensions. The live server is the one that I use, and especially eventually when we read data files you will need. The other extensions are useful, but you have to decide if they're useful for you. So the live server will automatically, when we right click, open up our program in a browser. And then the browser will understand JavaScript. But if we want the code to understand a little bit more JavaScript and maybe give us some hints as we're typing, then we might add more extensions. And then if you add an extension and then you say, I don't like that extension, you can uninstall the extension. So do you want me to install the second extension or not? Do you care one way or the other? Yeah. What's that? Yeah. Yeah, okay. Don't do sign language. Thank you. Yes. So there's a second one. I think it's ESLint. It's Microsoft, so that's like a name we know. And trust, hopefully, maybe not. And this is there's something called ECMAScript, which is JavaScript's. Do you want me to? You don't have to, you can. Just, it's flexible. I asked people if they wanted me to, and somebody said yes. So what you do is up to you. And you can take the class, the lecture part of the class, sort of, I'm just going to watch, or I'm going to work along with me. You can work along with me. You can just watch. You got to figure out what's right for you. Do I go a little too fast and you want to just watch? Do I go slow enough that you can work along and you want your own version of things? What I can't do, if you're
writing a program and you make some mistake, you can sort of ask me a question and I'll stop and I'll talk generally about it, but I can't come and look at your computer. In lab, I can come look at your computer. That's what lab's for, but I can't come look at your computer while lecturing to everybody else. So if you want to program as we go, which is fine, and it's sort of a more thorough experience, then you can ask questions and sort of say, and I'll tell you things that might have gone wrong or check, this is a thing you could check for, but I can't come look at your computer and find out your specific error. All right, so I've installed ESLint, which is going to understand a little bit more about JavaScript, and I've installed the live server so I can open up a page. Okay, so that I'm going to go over to Explorer. So that's this pane over here on the left, and I had extensions open, but now I have the Explorer open. But I'm not exploring anything right now because I opened neither a file nor a folder. I'm going to open a folder. Opening a folder is important with the live server. The live server, when we do a normal look at a web page, you like sports, you're going to go to some, I don't know, ESPN site. When you want to look at that page, you are on this computer in this room or your phone or whatever you're on, you are on some device, you are not at ESPN. Then you make your computer acts as a client and it makes a request to a server, in this case, a web server, and the web server sends the page down to you. The live purpose of the live server is so that our computer will act like both. Our computer will act like the client and the server. When a website is served, they serve you a folder and its contents. So that is why I'm going to open a folder, because I'm going to work with the live server, and the live server wants to know what folder to serve. It doesn't want to serve me a file, it wants to serve me a folder. And it's going to work effectively as like the home page. Okay, so it's going to say, here's what's available, and then look in that folder to see what files it might give. Okay, so I'm going to open a folder. I didn't do the lab. I was a bad boy. I didn't do the lab, at least not on this computer. And so I'm going to set up my folder, documents. I'll call it CSC 230. And you will discover with me that I do not like to have spaces in folders or files. It's allowed. They're a pain in the ass. I wouldn't do them if I were you, but that's up to you. Okay, so this is the folder that I am selecting. And then it asked me, do I trust it? And yes, I trust myself, I think. So here we are in this. So I have the Explorer open. Once I get going and if I want more space, I can close the Explorer. So once I sort of start up a file, I can decide, oh, maybe I'll close the folder. But right now, when I'm dealing with files and creating files, I want the Explorer open. So here's my folder. And I can do a new file. I can also go to File, New File. That will also work. But once I have the folder open, I like this little sort of icon shortcut. I've created the folder. If I go through the File, New File, it will give me sort of like a text file, which then I'll have to rename. If I go here, then it gives me the place to name the file immediately. So it's sticking it in my folder, and it is allowing me to name it immediately rather than give it a default name, which I have to rename. They both work, but I like things usually with fewer steps. So what am I going to do? So we did welcome. So I just need to do something else where the user says something and then I take that information and do something with it. So I'm going to maybe create a username. So maybe I'm going to use the first, I'll ask for the first name and last name, and then maybe I'll take the last name and the first initial or something like that. Just sort of put things together. We'll see how far we get. So all that was just to make sure I could come up with some name. I'll call it username, HTML. You can call it whatever you want. You could call it like Wednesday, August 31st. You can have spaces in the name. I don't care what your names are, but this is my name. Okay. So it created, we've had the Explorer, which I'll probably close in a second. We have the HTML. I did not, I was doing everything fresh from scratch. So I have not increased my font size. That's another reason for the Zoom meeting, because the font's going to be small. Later on, I will increase the font size so that more of you can see it without me in Zoom. But can you either in the room or on Zoom see what's written? Or up front. So I need somebody in the back to say, yes, I can see. People in the, oh, somebody gave me a thumbs up or something. I'll pretend it was a thumbs up. Maybe it was the finger. I don't have my glasses on. Oh, 2 thumbs up or 2 fingers, one or the other. Okay, so we are on here. I like the shortcut. Somebody was saying yesterday he wants to sort of type more things from scratch to make sure he knows it and learns it. I would say let the computer type as much for you as possible. And then just if you want to make sure you learn, then write your programs over and over again, or write different programs over and over again. But certain little things you want the computer to do for you. But you can type in Notepad, or you can just start typing. I'm going to use this Emmet abbreviation. So I hit an exclamation point, and I'm going to take it all in for me. This is the thing that always tricks me, because it looks like there are 2 things highlighted. It looks like document is highlighted, and it looks like this device width is highlighted. The thing that's really highlighted is, you can see the blinking cursor, is the device width. So if I start typing, it'll be the device width, and I don't want to change that. That is just a thing. A web page can be, I like computers, so I always look at web pages on computers, but you like phones and tablets and every other thing. And this is about sort of adjusting whatever page you've made to the device. That's what this is about. And I'm just going to leave it at this default value. So what did we make here? We made a web page that doesn't have anything on it. So it, well, I didn't do that yet because I didn't save. So let me save, or I could use Control S. And let me right click and open with the live server. It uses, I haven't opened Edge on this. I've opened Chrome, but I haven't opened Edge. The Visual Studio Code is a Microsoft product, so it by default wants to open the browser to Edge. There's a setting that we can change to say, I want you to open Firefox. I want you to open Chrome. I'm not going to do that. I like, as my browser that I'm using where I have Canvas and such, I like that to be Chrome, and I like my testing to be Edge. So I like that it's different than my normal browser. If it drives you crazy, there is a setting, and you can ask me and I'll find the setting and I'll give you instructions for changing the setting. Off the top of my head. It's not that hard, but I don't know it off the top of my head. So I'm not going to change it from Edge because I like it to be Edge, that's not my default browser, but I like my testing browser to be different than my normal browser, so that when I'm closing what I'm testing, I don't close Canvas and everything else I want open. Accidentally close things and I want it open all the time. This prevents me from doing that a little somewhat. It's the first time I'm opening Edge on this computer, so I don't want it bringing in any other data, and I'm going to start browsing. This is their welcome screen. Make this a little smaller. Their welcome screen, I don't want. Their other thing, I don't want. Here's what I've made so far. That word document in the tab, that is this title. So here, this big white space is the body, and there's nothing in the body. The only thing in the head that you see is this document. So I can change that. What was I calling it? This is something to do with usernames. Control S to save. And there it is. Now the tab says username. Okay. I didn't need to minimize it. I just need to send it to the background. Okay, so what do we have? There's these things in the, I'm going to call them angle brackets, the less than and the greater than. I'm going to call it angle brackets. I'm going to say open angle bracket and close angle bracket. And between two angle brackets, there's some word. And that whole angle bracket thing, I'm going to call a tag, an HTML tag. So our first tag is the document type saying this is HTML. There were versions of HTML, and in olden days, you would say which version of HTML you're using. Now they've sort of got their act together a little bit better, and it just says it's HTML, that's that. So you have it, it works if you don't have it. So, but it's like preferred that you have it. Is that a question or a stretch? The next thing we have is an HTML tag. I am going to right click and say format the document. This does absolutely nothing in terms of what the page does. It helps us read the page. So our next tag is the HTML tag. So this says then everything between the open HTML tag and the close HTML tag is all related to our page. This is saying over here that the default language of the page is English. If I were in Japan making a Japanese web page, that would say something different. If I were just, say, over in France, I might not have to change. They might have one or two more symbols than we have. If you go to a place with a lot of different characters, then you might want to change. So there's our HTML, our open and a close. Many tags work as a team. There's an open and a close, and what's important will be what's between them. So the HTML, and also I'll talk about the open HTML and the close HTML, and they work as a team. Here is the head. There's a head and a body. My joke is always that there's no neck. There's a head and a body, there's no neck. Okay, so there's nothing really goes here. Maybe a comment, but so there's a head, there's a body. The head is mostly stuff that you don't see other than the title, which is the tab. This is more stuff about what set of characters we're using. This is a very Microsoft-y thing, but we used a Microsoft product. And this is sort of saying Microsoft had a gazillion browsers, and this one is saying we're making this one for Edge. But you use a Microsoft product, you end up with some Microsoft stuff. You can delete it, it would still work. This is the one about the device. You might make a page that you want to work for a phone, a tablet, a PC that's very big, a PC that's not so big, like my little laptop here. This is just saying about sort of, if I maximize the width of the page, should adjust to the width of the device. And the title is what we have on the tab in the browser. Okay, so that stuff was all in the head. We're going to put something in the body. I can put a comment up here in the head. That's the thing I can put in the head. An HTML comment is, I can tell it's HTML because it starts with an angle bracket, exclamation, dash, dash. It filled in the end for me. I did not type the dash, dash, close angle bracket. That's part of the typing it does for me. This, it has some color coordinating to try to tell you what's what. And so it turned green. That's sort of a standard color for comments. Some people were working yesterday. They had a different color scheme going on from me. We can control the color scheme. It doesn't matter if your color scheme and my color scheme are different. It only matters that you can work within your color scheme. So if you can't work within the color scheme that's going on, then we can talk and we can find the setting to change it. If it's just different from mine, who cares? It's just, if you can't follow the color scheme that you've got, then we can work on that. Oh, let me, I type something. So this little 1 is telling me I haven't saved. So I'll just do a quick Control S and I'll save, and I can close the Explorer if I want to give myself a little bit more room. And so I'm making a comment. This is an HTML comment. You don't always have to say that, but I am, since we're still beginning. And I'll say page for username creation or something like that. So our page still doesn't do much of anything. It has a title and it has a comment. Let's put something under the body. I'm going to make a header at the top there. So I started with an angle bracket. You see this list popping up of a bunch of things. If you don't have the bunch of things, then maybe that's part of what came with my ES thing that my extension. So I'm going to make a header. So I'll type in H. There is H1 to H6. I'm going to use the H1. There is head. We already have a head. A web page has a head and a body, no neck. And we already have a head, no more heads. I don't want a two-headed monster, just one head. The thing that's spelled out, header, down on the list, that is explaining to a browser who may want to sort of understand the format of your page that the stuff you're making is a header. This is called semantic. It doesn't affect the way it looks. It just is explaining that the contents between the open header and the closed header is the header. The H1 through H6, these are more about the way it looks. H1 will be very large font and bold and on a line by itself, and etc. So I'm going to do an H1. I don't know. I care a little bit more about how it looks. I guess I'm shallow. I don't know. So I type in H1. It gives me the close H1 automatically. In computer science, in programming, it's very important that you close what you open. It's providing a lot of that automatically for you. And sometimes it's annoying, but it's trying to help you. Like a lot of your time will be debugging and trying to find your mistakes. And a lot of mistakes are, I opened something and didn't close it. So that's why it's always closing things for you. It's trying to help you. Sometimes especially with quotation marks. It's with the quotation marks, it's always messing me up. But with the other things, I'm happy it does it. So I'll live with the quotation marks because it does so many other good things for me. So here is my header, and I will say username creation. I will save it, Control S. I look over here on the browser, there is my header. When I give you a test, I'm going to say, put your name in a comment. And you'll get a point. On the first test, it may be 2 points. Later on, it'll be 1 point. Put your name in the title. You'll get a point. Maybe 2 points on the first test. Put your name in a header. The header doesn't go in the head. The header is something that you see. And the stuff you see, other than the tab, goes in the body. If you put the header in the head, browsers are smart and nice, and they will sort of figure it out for you and imagine that your header was down in your body. I'm not as nice as the browser. I will take off a smidge. I won't take off much, but I'll take off a smidge. The header doesn't go in the head. The header is something that you see in the body of the page. It belongs in the body. Anything you see in this big white area belongs in the body. This is the head. This is the only part of the head you see. This is the body. The head shows the tab. The body will show the work. Now, if you were to put this code up here, because it says H1, the browser will be smart enough to say that really belongs in the body and put it there. And so it will work. But I will say it's wrong. I won't give you 0 points, but I will give you, say if it's worth 1 point, I will give you 0.9. I won't give you full credit because you don't know where it belongs. But so if I give you a test, you already have some points. You know how to make the title, you know how to make an HTML comment, you know how to make a header. If I said make a header and you made the semantic header, if you spelled out header, that would be perfectly fine. I like the one about how it looks, but the other one is more about how it acts, and they're both headers. So I would be all right if you did the other type of header. And if you really wanted to be thorough, you would put the H1 header inside the other header. So you would say, I want it to act as a header and I want it to look like a header. Okay. All right. So now what do we want on this page? I want to say, give me your first name, give me your last name, have a button, try to construct a username out of it. Okay. So we saw this the other day, yesterday in lab. I'm going to make a division on the page. This is just a part of the page. The one thing, there are two, so I'm just making sort of a part of the page, designating a part of the page. I call it a division. There are other parts of the page, like a span or a section. A section is like header. It's more about how it acts than how it looks. A division is a little bit more about how it looks. And the big thing about how it looks, the automatic formatting, the way it looks for a division is that the stuff above and the stuff below will, the stuff in the div will be on its own space vertically. So if anything I have in here might be on the same line, but anything that comes below it anything that comes below it in my typing will also be below it on the page. So a div sort of defines a vertical amount of space. If I'm going to code something, if I were going to somehow affect this division, then I would give the division an ID. If I were going to encode, change the font size of this division, then I would have to be able to identify the division to be able to affect it. Then I would give the division an ID. I'm not going to do anything to this division other than have it, so I don't need to give it an ID. Any tag in here. Say again? Okay. Just do it, don't tell me. So any tag in here that I want to change, I can do that by identifying it, and then I write some code. But you saw in code that I have to be able to pick out the element to do something to it or to get something from it. If I'm not going to do anything from it, if it's just going to be there for the user to see, then I don't need to give it an ID. So I'm not going to do anything to the header. I'm not going to do anything to this division. No ID. Okay. I want to prompt the person for their first name and last name. I can just type, enter your, I'm going to do this and then I'm going to change it. I can just type, enter your, I don't know, first name. That works. Let me Control S to save it. You can see it right there. But I'm going to do something fancier. I'm going to identify that as a label. So I'm going to put that text in a label. It's not going to look any different. Control S. There it is. It looks the same. What is the difference? This is a behind the scenes difference. This is a difference. I'm going to give them a place to enter their name. And there are people who have vision problems. So this page is mainly a visual thing that we're making. But there are people with visual impairments, and they can get the web pages sort of read to them. And when I make this a label and connect it to the input, then the reader, for somebody visually impaired, will know that those two things go together, and that this is the instruction that goes with that box for the person to type in. So it's not a difference you're going to see, but it's a difference that's important for a person who can't see. Okay, so now I have to make my input. I'm making, you see here, I started an open angle bracket. I haven't finished that open angle bracket. And you see right now, this division is turned red because I haven't finished the input yet. And so I have a tag started and didn't end. And so that is giving me some indication that right now, if I stop right now, there's a problem. That's why that's turned red. I'm making an input for somebody to type in. So I have to say what type of input. We're going to learn different types of input. Our first is going to be a text input. I want to interact with this input. I want to go to it and get stuff out of it. Therefore, I have to be able to identify it. So I give it an ID. And so I said ID equals, and these are called attributes. The type is an attribute, and then that's the value of the attribute. So type is the attribute, and text is the value of that attribute. The ID, I'm going to call it TXT. This is the first name, so I'll call it TXT first. You could call it txt first name. You could call it txt first. You could call it txt name one. You could call it fn. You try to make it, the computer doesn't care. The computer cares that you, when you ask for it, that you type exactly the same thing. But there are things other than computers, other programmers who may be looking at your code, and you want it to sort of make sense to them. So you try to give these IDs some meaning. I usually use a prefix, txt, to say that this is a text input. And then I give the rest of the name something about what its role is in the page. So it's a text input that corresponds to the first name. So txt first. I could have said txt fn. I could have said name one or name first or first name, or don't put spaces here. That's not a good idea.
Does order matter when you do the input? Like,
No, that order of the attributes.
Hmm.
No, it doesn't matter.
Okay.
Good question. Okay. I said don't put a space, and I put a space there. Okay. And then I'm going to close it off. And input, a lot of these tags so far have worked as a team with an open and a close. This one works alone. The input works alone. So I just close it. This is sort of like me being old-fashioned, but there used to be an old-fashioned way to indicate that this guy works alone by putting a slash in there. It's not needed in modern HTML, but I tend to put it there because I'm old. So I'll save it, and there they are. Now I didn't finish my job, so it's not set up for the visually impaired person yet, because I didn't make these two work as a team. To make them work as a team, I say for, this is a label for the txt first. Control S, refresh the page. I don't need to, but I did. Again, nothing happens because that's a behind the scenes thing for somebody who's using a reader. So we're not going to see that effect, but if we're going to learn good habits, we ought to be doing that. I don't have very good habits, but that's like one of the few good habits I have. Okay. I want a last name. I'm going to copy everything. When you are copying, again, somebody said they like to type. If they like to type, they like to type. I'm going to copy this and then paste it below. Make sure you copy full units. So I copied the open div. I'm going to copy the closed div and everything in between. So again, pay attention of what's open and what's closed. And then when copying, if you're copying a unit, make sure you copy its open and its closed. So I'm copying that whole thing. Then I'm going to paste it down here, Control V. If I've lost track of my indenting, I don't think I have, but if I do, I can come back again and say format the document. And if I say format the document and it doesn't sort of indent and line up the way I expect, that's another way to look for a mistake. If the lining up isn't working, that something didn't close. Or you had, it's matching opening and closing all the time. That's what we're doing. And the indenting helps us realize that. And so when the indenting's off, we know we have a problem. All right, I'm quickly running out of time, but that's okay. What do I have? 7 minutes or something. Okay. Let me put a button in, input, spell it right, input. This will be of type button. That will have a value. A value of a button is what it says. So I'll say enter, something pretty boring, or maybe make username. Okay. And that's the end of the button, except it's not. I want the button to do something, so I want it to call a function. So I'm going to say on click. And I'm going to go to a function that I have to make when I click. And I need the name of a function. I'm going to call it, I don't know, make username. Why not? I don't like spaces and names. There are places where you can have spaces in a name. In a function name, you can't have a space. And it wants the parentheses that announces it's a function. And I need a place to put the answer. If I want to put the answer on a line by itself, I can use a div. If I want to put it in next to the button, I can use a span. Do you want it next to the button or under the button? Next to the button. Then we want a span. So Amber Alert. Okay, so if I make a span doesn't want to be on a line by itself. It could be on a line with other things. I want to do something to the span, so I must give it an ID. I'm going to say in there SP. And to announce that it's a span, and then I'm going to say username. Okay, so I have a place for the answer. And then what do I need? I need the function. The function is script, and it goes in a script tag. So far, I spelled it wrong. Script with a T, okay. So far, everything's been HTML. I'm finally doing a little bit of JavaScript. I use a script tag to announce that I'm changing languages. I'm moving out of HTML and into JavaScript. I say the keyword function. I match this username and the parentheses. If you're a master of typos, then you can copy and paste it. If you're a good typer and consistent typer, then just retype it. I put curly brackets. All this function is going to be defined between these two curly brackets. This is stuff that's going to happen when they click the button. Okay, what am I going to do? I'm going to get the first name, get the last name. Oh boy, I made a mistake and nobody yelled at me. I copied this and didn't update it to correspond to all the last stuff. That's like a beginner mistake. You got me making beginner mistakes. Okay, if I copy the stuff that says first, but now I want it for last. So change the for to last, change the ID to last, change the message to last. Okay. And now what am I going to do? I'm going to go to the page. I'm going to get the first name and I'm going to call it first. So I'm going to announce I'm going to have a thing called first. I'm going to go to the page, which is the document. I'm going to go to the page and I'm going to get a particular element on the page. I'm going to get that element based on its ID. The ID of the first name is txt first. If you trust yourself, then type it. If you don't trust yourself, copy and paste it. And right now, this is a whole box of things. I'm going to say I want the value from it. That's what's written in it. And I'm almost out of time, so I'm going to have to cut it short and pick it up on Friday. But what I'll do for now is I will alert it out. Alert is going to be a pop-up. And I'm going to see if I indeed got the first name off of the page. So let's see if I got the first. Shouldn't move so fast. So I had a button. The button has an on click, make username or close parentheses. Then I had a script area. I use keyword function, make username must match exactly. And then I said, go to the page, get an element by its ID, use text first as the ID. The value means grab the stuff in the box. That's going to be first. And I'm going to pop up and say what I got for first. And then I'm out of time, so we won't finish the job. So Fred, Flint, and there's Fred. Okay. I want to get the last name. I want to just use the first initial from the first name. I might want to put everything into lowercase. There's more work to do. I'm out of time, so we'll cut it here. I will post this. I'll post the code. I will post the video. And I'll hang out for 5 minutes